Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So we are going through what's going to come up in level 8. Let me just make sure I've got the screen to share. Give me a moment. Yeah. Hadith matrices. Level 8 hadith matrices. Do I have them here? Hold on. Bring it up. Okay. I'll share my screen. Here we are. Okay. So this is the level 8 hadith matrices. Now what we've done is I think this is awfully clever. I'm very proud of this. Because the science of hadith is all about akhbar. So we use the word akhbar in the science of hadith to mean reports about the Prophet Muhammed or about the events at the time. But in modern Arabic, we use the word akhbar to refer to the news. So we've created a modern Arabic language matrix scheme on news and media to complement the learning. So all your vocab, you're going to learn from the matrices, not from the hadith text, because it's quite hard to learn that classical vocab in a classical context. So we've brought that vocab, all of those words, every single word, we've brought it all into a modern context, and voila, we have for you, here we are, hadith matrices. Yeah, we use all the same words.
So level 7, 8, and 9, they're all matrix based as well. They're not like the master class lesson we are having.
Yeah, the master class is an exception. As a matter of rule, we don't teach Arabic, as you know, using the master class style grammatical notes, right? So. Because that paralyzes you. That is not the purpose. So the purpose of this master class is those of you who've done levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you've learned all of this material. Everything I'm teaching you really in the master class, you actually know if you think about it. It's not new, and all of you are responding and answering the questions. So in effect, I'm not really teaching you grammar. I'm summarizing the grammar you've already learned. You see? So remember, we teach the what before the why. So we've taught you 6 levels of what to say, and now we're teaching you just 5 classes of why we say it that way. Does that make sense?
No.
Yeah, so that's why we're doing some grammar, and because people like you, Iqbal, have been badgering me to to teach you some grammar. And
so the master class is essentially putting some names to the terms we've been learning for last year.
It's just putting a name to the face. You know, the face is putting the name to the face. Yeah. Okay. So here we have these matrices. So the matrix that Sumaya did yesterday, in fact, was this one, right? So we did makana and hujjiyya, yeah? So can you see we've got the word makana here, inna li makanatan ladal jumhur. I have a position status with the people. So this is something on politics, yeah? And then laysa li kalamika hujjiyyatun, your speech has no authority. So we've taken those words and we put them into a modern context. We've got the word masdar, yeah? The masdar meaning source, yeah? Wahyu, we use the word wahi, which means revelation in the classical context. We've used it here in a more modern sense, meaning the inspiration behind something. So we've used this in min al-muqarrari as well, which is actually a modern phrase. I don't think that's classical at all. So it's accepted that you are the inspiration behind these legislations, which is something you'd use in a modern political context. So we've used all of the classic words: hujja, dilala, makana, thiqa. All of these words, we've used them in a modern context, so you can learn them and use them and have conversational dialogues with them. But then also when you go back to read the hadith text, you know how you've got the vocabulary in order to decipher it and analyze the hadith text and make sense of it. Okay, so with that prelude, I'm going to invite Ustadha Sumaya, who's also now one of our teachers. Which level are you currently teaching, Sumaya?
Level 2.
Level 2. So Sumaya's taken a group through level 1, and now they're on level 2. I'm going to spotlight you. So the question that Rupan asked is, what will be what's the sort of transition from where they were into the new level? How would you describe that?
So I would say, from my experience, there was a transition in sort of 2 respects. The first being, I think Ustad's probably mentioned this before, but the lesson is delivered in Arabic. So you've done a bit of that probably in level 4s, 4, 5, and 6, where the teacher's spoken to you in Arabic, but still has probably spoken to you in English as well. Whereas level 7 onwards, no English is allowed. Actually, on Sunday, I think I tried to be cheeky and ask Ustad something in English, and he did not answer my question because it's not allowed. So that would be one of the probably the biggest step up, and it probably sounds quite daunting. I definitely found it daunting when we sort of had that shift, but it's also probably the most useful thing and the most productive thing that I found over the past 2 levels. It completely takes you out of your comfort zone, but the reason we're all, we're here is to learn the language and also to learn to speak the language. And the best place to do that is in an environment where the people around you are also learning. So your fellow students, your teacher is there to obviously support you, and also in an environment where the vocabulary is vocabulary that you know. You could attempt to do that outside the classroom, and you're probably at a stage where you can probably do a bit of that. If anyone's gone on holiday, probably not during a pandemic, but has gone on holiday to an Arab country, you might have attempted that. But the classroom is perhaps the safest setting for you to do that with sort of what's the phrase? No bars, something. Ustad probably know what the phrase is. And so that's probably been the biggest step up, is that having the class delivered in Arabic. And what Rupam was mentioning, you could go abroad and you could learn that. And this is the Institute's way of sort of replicating that experience, is delivering the class in the Arabic medium. The other step up I'd probably say is not so much a step up, but also it's you being able to apply the tools and the vocab that you've learned for the reason that you're here. So most of us are here to understand the Qur'an, and you've probably engaged with that from levels 1 to 6, and your teachers are probably giving you eyes in the Qur'an and giving you an opportunity to sort of see how it's been used. But from level 7 onwards, you really are able to engage with it in a much more deeper level. So level 7 is balagha, rhetoric, and in the matrices, we've got a few verses in there of examples of rhetorical devices, for instance, that are used, like rhetorical questions. So you've got the ayah in Surah Al-Fil, which we've all memorized since we were a kid, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil, and that's a rhetorical device. And that we have an opportunity in level 7 to really understand that and to really appreciate why that ayah was written the way it was written, and the wisdom behind it and the intent behind it. So I think that's probably the 2 main shifts, at least for me, from my perspective, was having the language delivered in Arabic, and also being able to apply it for the reason that we're learning Arabic. So that was answer to your question.
Yes, and actually going back to something Rupam was saying earlier, Rupam asked me earlier today, actually, he said, if a student goes abroad, say to Egypt or to one of the other Arab countries, and studies full-time from scratch, from beginning, absolute beginner, the way they start with us here in London, day for day, week for week, month for month, year for year, how would you compare? So if a student is abroad studying full-time, so they've taken the whole time out, they've just dedicated themselves studying Arabic, studying full-time from scratch, ground up, how would you compare the level with our students who are doing Arabic part-time with 1 lesson per week? Yeah. So what Sumaya has done with us over the last 3 years, how would you compare that? And I said to him that obviously at the edges of the spectrum, you have the exceptions. So there are some people, I've met people who've gone abroad and in 6 months are speaking fluently, but that's like 1 in 100,000, right? So that person is not the example we're talking about. Yeah, so we're talking about the middle of the spectrum, the range of sort of average students, or just below average and above average. So the range of students who are sort of set the example. What I've seen students be able to do, and I've had members of my own family who've gone out there. My wife has been out in Egypt. She was there the year before, for about 8-9 months with my children, and I was commuting back and forth. So my wife studied Arabic for a whole 8 months there. I think day for day, week for week, month for month is the same, even though our program is part-time, which sounds bizarre. So you're much better off staying in London, doing 1 2 hour or 2.5 hour class, not much better off for you are much better off financially in terms of time, doing a once a week class and then putting several hours of time ideally half an hour, an hour per day if you can, during the week, and rolling your sleeves up, working hard every week, and carrying on with living in London or wherever you are, living with your family, carrying on with your job, and you can achieve the same thing from the comfort of your home city. Of course, as I said, there are exceptions. So you could bring me a person who's been abroad for 6 months, and that guy is a genius. I couldn't do that, but I have met people like that. At the same time, I've met people who've been abroad for 2 or 3 years and still can't string a whole sentence together. So I'm not going to use that person as an example, because that person's sort of not the typical example, right? Because our students within level 1, 2, and 3 are speaking. Okay, so that's what I would say. Do we have any questions for Sumaya? Here's your chance to ask. Sort of.
Yes, Ustad, I have one question. It's Wakar here. So, Sister Sumaya, when you move from the level 6 to level 7, in terms of the amount of work you did on a weekly basis, was there a massive increase, or you're doing the same amount of work?
I don't think it was a massive increase. Actually, what I think you'll find, and you've probably found this as you progress through the levels, is that your ability to take in content and to memorize content gets better. Like you can do that over a shorter period of time than when you started level 1. So now in level 7 and 8, alhamdulillah, Ustad can give us quite a relatively complex matrix, but we've gone through this process for quite a few, for some of us at least a year or 2 now, and we're able to absorb that a lot quicker. So I wouldn't say it's a lot more work in terms of time, but you are taking in a lot more sort of complex, really deep, meaningful content than perhaps you were doing in level 4, 5, 6. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
عندي سؤال أيضا.
Yeah, I don't know who that was.
It's
Naima, go ahead.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, is there a recap of the vocab that we've already learned? So do we keep so that we don't lose the vocabulary that we've learned in levels 4, 5, 6, and even 1, 2, and 3?
Definitely. I think you're, as with probably in level 4, 5, 6, you're still using the content that you've learned in level 1, 2, 3. You're still doing that in level 7, 8, 9. So although the topic is around news and media, so that's in level 8. I can't remember what the topic was in level 7 now, Ustad. But you're still having those dialogues, you're still having those conversations, so you can still bring in the content. It doesn't mean you shouldn't revise it. You definitely should, but you are able to bring in the vocab. In terms of grammar and rules, you're building on that. It's you're introduced to sort of slightly more complex structures, but everything that you've learned in level 4, 5, 6 is pretty much your foundation that you're building off.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, what I say is, because we do a lot of freestyle dialogue, the students in the class are constantly bringing up words from previous levels. So what happens is that kind of helps everybody plug the gaps in their knowledge. Somebody else is going to come up with a word that maybe has slipped your mind, and you think, oh, what was that? And then you remember, oh, that was from level 4 or 5. And so over time, because of this constant regurgitation of previous information, exposure through the class and the dialogues, those get reinforced anyway.
Yeah, and I'd also add that so you continue doing the sort of dialogues that you've been doing in level 4, 5, 6, but also you get to have more interesting conversations. So on Sunday, for instance, I think people had a discussion about the COVID vaccine, which was interesting. Me and my partner had a discussion about Donald Trump and whether you should be trusting a president despite his actions. So you get to have really intellectual, deep conversations in level 7 and 8 because of the vocab that you're exposed to and the sort of eloquent vocab that you're exposed to.
Assalamu alaikum, Sumaya. Just to ask, so now that you've completed level 7, looking back, what would you have done to prepare yourself when transitioning over from level 6 to level 7?
Well, that's a really good question. So I don't think I realized, at least for me, and it's even now, I would still say it's an area of development for myself, is a speaking on the spot. And I think I would prepare myself for that, for it being something that's, would take me out of my comfort zone. But one thing I've started doing now, which I wish I sort of did a bit before, was when I'm practicing sort of the matrices, or when I'm trying to do sort of work outside class, is just vocalizing a bit more and putting myself on the spot. So one thing I do now, which I've told my students, which I find slightly embarrassing, but I do record myself speaking to myself in Arabic. And I've got them to do that exercise, and they submit homework to me where they're speaking to themselves in Arabic or doing a vlog or something like that. And it's just about getting yourself comfortable with speaking and making those mistakes. And you get to do that in the class in level 4, 5, and 6 as well. But I think it's sort of continuing that. That would be one thing. That's the first thing that's come to the top of my head. I haven't really thought about it, I'll be honest. But that's one thing that I'll probably prepare myself for and try and get myself a bit more comfortable with doing that.
Shukran, thank you.
No worries.
Can I just add one thing? Is that, so Salman, I think most of you here have done your test. You've done your test. So Salman has shared the test results with me and also some of his analysis with regards to individual performances. I don't think we will be, the people that should not be joining level 7, some of them have already been notified. So if you haven't been sent a message from me about considering your options, i.e. maybe going back a level or 2, then that means Salman's assessment of your ability is that you are ripe for progression onto level 7. Going back to Brother Wakar's question about the amount of work required going into level 7, I have something known in the martial arts circles and in the fitness circles about progressive overload. So you guys are now in a situation, if you've made it this far, you're engineered rightly to take on the mantle and the challenges of level 7. And there is going to be that progressive development and increase in terms of what you're expected to do in level 7. That's what we call progress. Otherwise, you're running on the spot, right? Are there any other questions from the floor?
Just a question, maybe Ustad or yourself can answer, Rupan. Do we still get all the tools that we've been getting up until level 6, like YouTube, audios, videos, memorize, etc.?
Yep. So Sumayya's cohort actually didn't have those because they were the pioneers. So they've actually succeeded without memorizing. They've just been working using matrices and hard text. So for your cohort, that's all being prepared as we speak right now. So we're creating the YouTube videos and the memorize for the level 7 and 8 for your batch. So good news.
Yeah, that's
actually, to be precise, the original G was the original generation is Sumayya's cohort actually. So she's got the her and her crew have got the title of the original G. It's not you guys. So a lot of the testing of the program and the analysis has been done on these guinea pigs, and alhamdulillah, and also the feedback, they've been fantastic, absolutely fantastic in terms of caring about the program, caring about how it develops, and giving us that feedback. And I want to thank all of you, those of you who submitted your feedback forms without me having to request it about 3 or 4 times. I really, really thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's really, really important, whether you progress or you don't, or whether you join level 7 or you don't, is that we get your feedback and we get your responses with regards to how we develop the program. So thank you very much.
All right, no more questions. Should we go back to the grammar?
Fantastic.
All right. What I'll do is, I think, Rupan, you wanted the grammar to be on a separate video. So let me stop this recording. So we'll have